Self-respect is so important. In fact, I believe self-respect is the foundation for effective self-leadership. And one of the ways to develop self-respect is to face down a challenge. Now, some of the challenges of life you've got to face down, get thrown at you. You don't get a choice. Others, you get to choose. Now, I love mountains, always have. Visited the Rockies in Yosemite National Park many years ago, and getting up to the snow line there was just an amazing experience. And then a few years later, I was in Kazakhstan, and just coming up from Almaty, out of there into the Himalayas and up to the snow line again, just so beautiful. Enjoyed the scenery, the atmosphere, the silence, the awesome grandeur of the mountains. Now in Australia, we don't have mountains really. Kosciuszko is 2,228 metres high. It's a nice stroll in the summer. There's a little bit more ice and snow in the winter. But in 2006, I travelled to Japan and climbed Mount Fuji in August of that year. And Fuji is a little bit more of a serious mountain. Fujisan, as they call it. 3,776 metres. Anything above 3,000 metres, the oxygen gets a bit thin in the air and the dangers of altitude sickness creep in. You've got to control your breathing and your heart rate when you get above 3,000 metres. But with Fuji, it's walked by so many people, and some Japanese walk it every year. It's part of their ritual. And it's a well-worn path. In fact, they've zigzagged a path all the way up the mountain. And little kids walk it, old grandmas walk it. It's a serious walk. It's quite challenging, but it's not really going to stretch you too far. But I enjoyed facing down that challenge. Then you get to the top and you can have a coffee because they've helicoptered in coffee shops and all kinds of things on the top of Mount Fuji during the 2 months you can climb it each year. But the highest mountain in Southeast Asia is Mount Kinabalu. It's in East Malaysia at the top of Borneo. And it's a serious mountain. It's 4,095 metres and it's straight up. There's no zigzagging pathways that have been carved out for you. It's straight up. A few places there's ropes that you can pull yourself up over the rock face because it gets quite wet and slippery up there. It's raining a lot. So you climb to 3,000 metres. My stepson and I climbed this mountain in April 2017. We got to the bottom where the starting point, you drive to a certain point and then you get assigned a guide. And then we started out and we climbed from about 1,600 metres up to 3,000 metres elevation where there's a guest house. You stay in overnight and have a meal. And then at 2 a.m. you start out with headlamps on, and the aim is to get to the top, so to summit before the sunrise, so you can see the sunrise, assuming you get good weather. So getting to the 3,000 metre guest house, that was very challenging. It was real hard work, but we did it, and we kept a good pace, and we thought, wow, what's it going to be like tomorrow in the dark? We got there and we started out at 2 a.m. the next morning after a brief little bit of sleep. And it was very challenging, just straight up the rock face because all the vegetation had disappeared by this stage and we're on rocks. And climbing with others, with our guide, we really needed him. And I got to a point where my heart rate was going so high and my breathing was so erratic, I had to slow myself right down and basically count 50 steps, stop, get my breathing down, my heart rate down, do another 50 steps. And that's how I made it from about 3,300 metres up to 4,095 metres to the summit of Mount Kinabalu. When you hit the summit there, it's such a euphoric experience. This is the hardest physical challenge I've ever faced in my life. Unbelievable. The euphoria of reaching the summit, even though it's dark and you can't see much around you. There's a little sign there saying you've summited, and there's lots of people around who've got there as well. There's maybe 100 others on the mountain that day. But then watching this mountain emerge out of the darkness, the rugged beauty of this stony landscape emerging out of the darkness as the sun began to rise was an incredible reward. Absolutely incredible. And then you had to climb down. And whereas breathing and heart rate was the challenge going up, coming down, wow, the pressure on my knees. I was over 60 when I did this. And wow, the pressure on my knees going down. We went down a lot faster than we went up, but I know it took me over a week to recover. We were back down in Kota Kinabalu in the city for the next few days resting. And I couldn't even walk down the curb, a step of about this far. I had to go down sideways because my quads were so tight and I was absolutely wrecked. About a week later, I started to feel normal again. So that challenge, overcoming that challenge that I chose, incredibly elevated me, gave me confidence, made me feel like I could do anything in business and in life. And we need those times where we face down our challenges and develop our self-respect. That's one of the ways we do it. Self-respect can't be given to you by anybody else. Self-respect is the gift that only you can give yourself. Now, move forward a couple of years. November 4, 2019. I'm sitting in my urology specialist office, and I'd had a little bleed in my urine, and they did a scan and found something growing in my bladder. And so they took a biopsy of it, and I was here to get the results of that biopsy. And he looked at me, and he didn't beat around the bush. He went straight to it. He said, "Mr. Drury, I'm sorry, I've got bad news for you. You're in the very small minority of people that, about 2%, that I have to tell bad news. The tumor is fast growing, it's malignant, it's invaded your muscle tissue already around your bladder. We're going to have to hit it with chemo and then take your whole bladder. And you're going to have a urostomy for the rest of your life. Basically, you'll be weeing into a bag for the rest of your life." I sat there and thought, wow, this is a mountain. This is a mountain I didn't choose. This is incredible. What do I do? My faith helps me in times like this, and I look to God and say, wow, Lord, how do we get through this? And in the midst of all that, I started chemo, but I was unsettled, and I went and got a second opinion and found that there are other ways to deal with this. And so gratefully and thankfully, I found other medical opinion and other advice. And in February 2020, just before COVID hit, I had surgery to remove a growth from the top of my bladder. It was in the muscle, but they managed to get it all and to get all the cancer that was there. They took a few lymph nodes, and there was no cancer in the lymph nodes. And they took it all. It was a very, very successful operation. 6 months later, I had a follow-up checkup, no sign of cancer. 14 months later, I'm about to have a second checkup. And but through this year, it's been an incredible mountain that I've climbed. My wife has also had breast cancer in this last year. We didn't choose that either. And she's had major surgery and chemotherapy and is still recovering from the effects of that now. Some mountains in life you don't choose. But as you face down the challenge, you know what develops? Your self-respect. It's never too late to begin to face down your challenges and develop or rebuild your self-respect.